Coming up today, it's decision time for millions of Koreans as the nation heads to the polls for the 2016 general election. They are selecting the candidates that will represent them in the National Assembly for the next 4 years. US media reports that North Korea could be gearing up to test fire a long-range mobile ballistic missile. It's thought the missile could be capable of hitting the US mainland. Plus, the International Monetary Fund slashes its forecast for South Korea's economic growth this year from 3.2 to 2.7%. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, April 13th here in Seoul. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We are going to start with our coverage of the general election. So the 2016 general election is our starting point this morning, as you would imagine, and voting has just started at thousands of polling stations across the country. Eligible voters in Korea have the next 12 hours to cast their ballot. When polling stations close at 6 p.m. Korea time, the ballot boxes will be transferred to 253 vote counting centres around the country to be totted up. Ballot boxes from Korea's remote island areas will be transferred under the tight security of patrol boats, and the boxes are sealed with hologram stickers to prevent any tampering. To give everyone the best chance to vote, today is a so-called red day here in Korea, meaning most workers have the entire day off. The rate of vote counting will vary by region, but the National Election Commission predicts results could start taking shape by around 10 p.m, when up to 70% of the count will have been done. So, after a long campaigning period, D-Day is finally here and polling stations are now open for the 2016 general election. It's still pretty early here in Korea, just gone 6 a.m. But let's get a sense of how many early birds are out already. First, we are going to connect to our Ji-won, who is at a polling station in Seoul's central Jongno district. Ji-won, how's it looking?
Good morning, Mark. This polling station just opened a few minutes ago, and despite it still being the crack of dawn, a few people have already dropped by to vote before starting their day. More than 3,000 voters are expected to visit this elementary school turned-out polling station to vote throughout the course of the next 12 hours. More than 135,000 people are eligible to cast their ballots in the Jongno district, accounting for about 1.6% of Seoul's total voting population. To tell you briefly about why Jongno is a key district, 3 former presidents were elected as lawmakers here on their road to becoming president. It is also home to the presidential office of Cheongwade and the central government complex. And there is a fascinating matchup this year. Former Seoul Mayor Oh Se-un of the ruling Saenuri Party is taking on the incumbent main opposition party candidate and political heavyweight Jung Se-gyun. Those two are expected to duke it out, but 8 other candidates are also running here. With 10 candidates, it is the most heavily fought-over district in the entire country. Well, that's all I have for now. Back to you, Mark.
And now we're going to turn to our Oh Soo-young in the bottom right of your screen there. She is standing by at a community centre in southern Seoul that's been transformed into a polling station for the day. Soo-young.
Hi Mark, I'm at a polling station in Seocho-gu district, south of Seoul's Hangang River. We've only had 1 voter so far, as it is still quite early. But over the next 12 hours, more than 300,000 people are due to cast their ballots in Seocho-gu's A and B constituencies. That's roughly 4.3% of Seoul's total population. Gangnam 3 districts tend to Seocho-gu, along with Gangnam-gu and Songpa-gu, make up the so-called Gangnam 3 districts. They are the most affluent parts of the capital, with the highest level of annual income and the most expensive property prices. The 3 are steady conservative strongholds, and they tend to vote strongly for the ruling Saenuri Party. At the 2012 general election, the ruling party won all 7 seats allocated to the regional bloc. There are more than 8.4 million eligible voters in Seoul across its 49 electoral districts. Due to the relatively high early voting rate last week, the National Election Commission forecast a turnout in the upper 50% range nationwide, hopefully higher than the last general elections record of 54.2%. Seoul recorded a turnout of 55.5% in 2012. It's going to be a long day for everyone here, so we'll have to wait and see how many voters come by between now and 6 p.m. Back to you.
Well, thank you very much for your reports there. That was our EG1 and Oh Soo-young reporting from a couple of polling stations in Seoul, which we hope will be very, very busy today. And we'll be connecting to our team of reporters throughout this election day, so you'll be able to keep abreast of the day's developments and the results. They are expected to start to filter in tonight. We are going to continue our election coverage now because voter turnout could be a game changer this year, especially in the most hotly contested regions. Opinion polls show Korea's young people, who are going through a particularly tough time these days, could come out in their droves to vote. Kim Ji-yeon with the details.
Voter turnout is going to be key this year, and a recent survey shows age and party preference could play into who goes to the polls between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Wednesday. A survey of 2,536 eligible voters conducted earlier this month by local pollster Realmeter showed that 30-somethings are more likely to vote than any other age group, followed by 20-somethings.
I tend to look at the party's pledges targeting young people like me, things like youth unemployment and welfare policies to help us support our parents in this rapidly aging society.
After the Seoul ferry incident, I realized the importance of practical pledges. So I'll try to pick the party I think could actually carry them out.
Meanwhile, many respondents in their 60s said they don't want to vote this year.
If only politicians did what they said they were going to do. Nowadays, people only think of themselves. Politicians are the same. Only individualism has grown.
The survey also found that the highest percentage support from likely voters went to the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, followed by the minor opposition Justice Party, the ruling Saenuri Party, and the splinter People's Party. This election marks the first time in 20 years Koreans get to choose from a multiple number of parties rather than the traditional two-party system. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, in the rest of the day's news, North Korea is seemingly preparing to conduct its first launch of a mobile ballistic missile that could potentially reach parts of the United States. Citing U.S. officials, CNN reported Tuesday that U.S. intelligence satellites have detected such movements, and it's likely to involve the medium-range Musudan missile. This type of missile is thought to be capable of reaching Guam as well as Alaska. But there's also a chance the North could try to test the longer-range road-mobile intercontinental ballistic missile KN-08 or its more advanced version, the KN-14. These are considered capable of reaching the west coast of the continental United States. Now, officials have cautioned the North may just be attempting to deceive the US and may not go ahead with such a launch. The report comes amid speculation Pyongyang could launch another provocation to commemorate the birthday of North Korea's founding leader Kim Il-sung. That will fall on Friday. Last week, the North claimed that it successfully carried out a ground test of a powerful ICBM engine. North Korea has issued its first response regarding the group of North Koreans that defected en masse to the south last week. The regime has called it an unprecedented abduction and called on Seoul to send its citizens home. Connie Kim with the details.
North Korea called the defection of 13 North Koreans an unprecedented abduction, slamming South Korea. Pyongyang's first response to the defection came through the North's Korean Central News Agency on Tuesday. The North Korean Red Cross said in a statement that South Korea will face consequences if it does not apologize for the abduction and send back its citizens. Pyongyang's response comes as the defected North Koreans were reported to have links to the North's Ryugyong hotel. They're said to be the children of leading officials within the North's Workers' Party of Korea and other administrative bodies. The 105-story hotel is the tallest building in North Korea, with an estimated cost of $750 million, but it has not opened since construction wrapped up in 2011. Citing sources in Pyongyang, the online newspaper Daily NK reported Tuesday that the North Koreans had been working abroad for years to fund the hotel's construction and the Workers' Party. The report added that business had been good but started taking a downturn after UN sanctions were imposed on the North last month. The North Korean restaurant where the 13 North Koreans worked is located in the city of Ningbo in Zhejiang province but is now closed. The group is reported to have flown to South Korea from a country in Southeast Asia after leaving China on April 6th. Pressure on North Korean restaurant workers to send cash to the regime was one of the reasons why they chose to flee to North Korea. In addition, North Korea's Ministry of State Security has reportedly sent surveillance teams to China in an attempt to tighten its monitoring of workers abroad. 342 North Koreans defected to South Korea in the first 3 months of this year, a jump of 17.5% from the same period last year, and suggesting a recent increase in instability within the regime. South Korea does not usually announce defections in order to protect the defectors' safety, marking the announcement of the group defection unusual. Seoul says announcements about future defections will be made depending on their safety. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea is hosting 2 sets of high-level talks, one with the US, the other a 3-way meeting between Seoul, Washington and Tokyo. Topping the agenda, continued enforcement of sanctions on North Korea. Kwon Jong-ho has more.
Seoul's Foreign Ministry confirmed on Tuesday that the Deputy Chief of the National Security Office, Cho Tae-yong, will be meeting with his US counterpart, Tony Blinken, on April 20th in Seoul for a high-level strategic dialogue. This is the second round of talks since Presidents Park and Obama agreed at a bilateral summit last October to increase cooperation in response to North Korea's provocations. Since then, the UN Security Council passed a landmark resolution putting its strongest ever international sanctions on the regime. Its continued enforcement is set to be a main talking point.
South Korea and the US both currently have a strong belief that to change North Korea's attitude, we need a strong foundation of international cooperation to strictly enforce the UN Security Council resolution and put strong pressure on North Korea.
Observers say the possible deployment of a US THAAD advanced missile defense system could also be discussed. The talks will come on the back of another trilateral vice-ministerial meeting between South Korea, the US, Japan a day prior. The Foreign Ministry has said these talks will be the continuation of discussions held at the Trilateral Summit in Washington, D.C. Although regional and global issues regarding healthcare and climate change are also on the agenda, they will likely play second string to the North Korean issues. It's been over a month since the UN resolution was passed, but compared to previous sanctions, its effects are being more keenly felt by the regime.
The latest carpet sanctions covering almost all economic activity, along with much greater cooperation from China, has meant that the difficulties that North Korea is facing are on a different scale than before.
South Korea, the US, Japan will be looking to use the upcoming meetings to further solidify cooperation and ramp up more pressure on the North. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Now, the International Monetary Fund has cut South Korea's growth outlook for this year to 2.7%, down 0.2 percentage points from its earlier projection in January. In its latest growth projection for the global economy, the IMF said that slowing demand in China will continue to take a toll on the South Korean economy. For next year, it expects South Korea to grow 2.9%, also marking a cut from an earlier 3.2% forecast. As for the world economy, the IMF says recovery momentum has weakened due to increasing financial volatility and falling commodity prices. It predicts the global economy will expand 3.2% this year, down from its previous projection of 3.4%. Now, staying with economic news, and South Korea and China have agreed to extend their currency swap deal that was set to expire next year. Kim Jong-soo has the details.
Korea and China agreed on Monday to extend their 2011 currency swap deal that's scheduled to end in October 2017. The current value of the swap deal, which sits at $60 billion, is also subject to a possible expansion. The agreement was finalized by Finance Minister Yu Il-ho and People's Bank of China Governor Zhao Xiaochan on the sidelines of the Inter-American Development Bank meeting in the Bahamas. The currency swap deal between the two nations first began in 2009 and was previously extended in 2011. Under the deal, when Korea depletes its foreign exchange reserves, which currently sits at $365 billion, it can sell a specified quantity of Korean won to China's central bank. In return, Korea can receive an equal amount of Chinese renminbi at the prevailing market exchange rate. Later, at a designated time, the payments are returned according to a fixed exchange rate. Experts say these swaps can help strengthen trade relations between the two countries.
Although the value of the swap agreement only amounts to a sixth of Korea's total foreign reserves, I think it's best to understand the extension as a symbol of the strong economic and political alliance between the two nations.
The extension of the swap deal is also expected to help Korea insure itself against an increasingly unstable global financial market, which faces possible hikes in the value of the US dollar and the Japanese yen. Kim Jong-soo, Arirang News.
The president of Brazil, Dilma Rousseff, is facing impeachment in the National Congress, has accused her second-in-command of being involved in a plot to overthrow her. Rousseff said her enemies were openly trying to destabilize a legitimately elected president. She suggested her vice president, Michel Temer, was one of the leaders of the plot. He will take over if the Senate agrees to impeach Rousseff and proceed with a trial against her. A congressional committee on Monday recommended to the lower house that Rousseff be impeached for breaking budget laws to support her re-election in 2014, a charge Rousseff says was trumped up to remove her from office. Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Do have a great day, and thank you as always for watching. If you are watching us in Korea and are eligible to vote, don't forget to head down to your local polling station before 6 p.m. today. And a reminder as well that we have the latest on the general election throughout today and tomorrow on Arirang News. Our next newscast is coming up at 10 a.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.